Thank you, Dr. Jane. Elizabeth Cousins, President of the United Nations Foundation, U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, Secretary John Kerry, the head of Oceans Conservancy, Janice Sells Jones, and all my fellow friends of the ocean, Bulobinaka, as we say in Fiji. Thank you for having me. Your Excellencies, in advance of President Biden's Leaders Summit on Climate, I want to start by saying this. After the past 4 years, it is a breath of fresh air to have the United States of America is not an adversary, but an ally in the fight to save our planet. But this is not 2016 anymore. The state of the world is much more dire and require much more ambitious plans and tangible commitments if there's any hope in achieving net zero emissions by 2050. At this summit, some of the world's most vulnerable, we in small island developing states, were left sorely underrepresented. We, the tiny carbon emitters, plagued by outside climate devastation. We, the victims, battered by superstorm and superstorm. We, the vulnerable peoples who are forced to relocate entire communities to escape the rising seas. We, the nearly 60 countries and territories whose very existence is threatened by the climate emergency, requires access to finance to urgently build our climate resilience. We were largely relegated to the kids' table, with only 3 among our ranks invited to address the summit itself, none from the South Pacific or the Indian Ocean. On its face, it may seem to make sense to focus so much on inviting the major emitters. After all, just 17 countries are responsible for 80% of the world's carbon emissions. But turning a blind eye to the world's most climate vulnerable states, we are not looking forward, we're turning back. If the Biden administration was to show that it truly sees the developing world as more than its predecessor, refraining from vulgar descriptors isn't going to be enough. Our plight needs to be heard, it needs to be seen, and it needs to be met with tangible action. Just because our carbon footprint is small does not mean we aren't filled with big ideas and perspective. Nowhere is that more true than when it comes to the vitality of our oceans. After all, we may be small islands, but we are large ocean states with exclusive economic zones that cover huge expanses of our seas. For generations, our way of life, our national identity, our culture, and our traditions and our economic vigor have been forged by the ocean. And today, we are leading the way with big ideas, big innovations, and big commitments to protecting our ocean, not only for our benefit, but for the benefit of world faced with a climate emergency and for future generations. However, today our ocean is faced with a multitude of threats, from overfishing to pollution to habitat degradation and destruction. The oceans are in dire and worsening conditions, all of which are compounded further by the devastating effects of climate change. But we can also find immense hope in the ocean's immense resilience. That resilience starts with marine protected areas and through wonderful initiatives like the 30 by 30, which Fiji is working with the United Kingdom. Securing a global network of these marine parks and actively and aggressively protecting them from harmful activities can provide our ocean with the breathing room it needs to regenerate and restore itself to be our planet's most valuable climate assets. And for the climate-ravaged coastal communities in small island developing states like in Fiji, these highly protected areas will be a godsend, benefiting coastal economies, allowing for sustainable livelihoods and ecosystems. That's why today Fiji is pleased to announce that we will join the efforts of other blue leaders in calling for 2 concrete goals to strengthen the ocean resilience to climate change, putting the world on the path to net zero. First, we strongly support a new global target to protect at least 30% of the global ocean by 2030 through a network of fully protected marine areas, the next Convention of Biological Diversity. And second, we call for the rapid conclusion of a robust new United Nations thread to establish, conserve, and protect marine biodiversity in the ocean beyond our national jurisdiction. The science is clear. These 2 big blue ideas are the best way to safeguard our ocean and build its resilience to climate change. I call on all our leaders from the Pacific and all around the world to join me in realizing these essential protections. As my friend UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres reminded the world as he visited Fiji to see the impact of climate change firsthand, this is indeed the fight for our lives. I hope you, Secretary Kerry, and President Biden himself will follow in his footsteps and accept my invitation to join us in Fiji this August as Pacific leaders meet for our summit of our own. And thank you.